Hello everybody, and if you haven't already guessed by the title, this video is covering my return to USS New Jersey. Now, I met a reasonable number of you there, as this return to New Jersey was done at the beginning of this year, back in February 2023, which ironically enough, as it turns out, is going to be almost exactly a year before New Jersey goes into dry dock, which is happening, at least tentatively, in February next year at the time of this video is going out. So February 2024, not too long from now. If you compare just this picture to the one in the previous video I did on New Jersey, you'll see the covering has moved along as they're obviously continuing with their redecking process. And I was, of course, welcomed aboard by the wonderful crew of USS New Jersey, including, of course, Ryan and Libby, or to give him his proper title, Ryan Szymanski, curator of the Battleship New Jersey Memorial and Museum, as you'll know if you follow the Battleship New Jersey channel. And you might be thinking, well, Drac, where could you go and show us bits of the battleship that are interesting that you didn't go last time? Well, I'm both glad you asked and also somewhat terrified that you asked, because, of course, there are places on the ship that we didn't go before, and some of those places we're going to explore in this video. And, well, those who've been following the channel long enough will know that I do have a reasonable degree of vertigo, so of course I signed myself up when I was communicating with Ryan via email before I headed out to the States, and we were trying to work out where we would go, and I said, well, you know what, let's try and get as high as we possibly can on the ship and as low as we possibly can on the ship. And of course, high means going up that foremast there. So, this is where a British naval historian with a severe case of engineering-induced vertigo tries to climb to the highest point on an Iowa-class battleship. The things I do for you guys. We're going to pick up the footage as we emerge from the top of the forward superstructure tower, which, of course, you will have seen if you've looked at the previous video visiting USS New Jersey. And then we're going to go on up from there and then also down from there and show you some rather interesting things, as well as how long it takes somebody who's just coming off a massive adrenaline-terror high to get from the highest point on New Jersey to the lowest point on New Jersey. Now, of course, I do have to add a couple of caveats. It's very windy on the Delaware River, especially in February, so there is a reasonable amount of wind noise in the footage. I apologise for that. There's not a huge amount I can do. I have put it through a little bit of a post-processing audio correction to try and reduce the wind noise, but it is what it is. And equally, because it's windy and cold, getting the video to be entirely stable is a little bit of a challenge. Again, I did my level best with what I had available to me while I was there, and there's probably going to be a small amount of post-processing to try and stabilise it again. But before you go writing off in the comments, yes, the portion right up at the top of the ship will be a little bit shaky and a little bit blustery, but I challenge you to try and do any better. One last note, of course, before we start, is that none of this would have been possible without the massive help and cooperation of the Battleship New Jersey crew. So if you do want to show them some appreciation, especially in light of the fact that they need every cent, I suppose, in the US that they can get to help with the dry docking process, pop over to the Battleship New Jersey channel, and there's plenty of information there how you can help support the ship as it goes in for a rather historic dry docking. But before we headed up the mast, just as a quick test of both my vertigo and the camera, we decided to pop into one of the funnels. You made it! Hey! Whew. Interesting though that presumably this is original.
Yes.
So the
This ladder seems to be a 1980s addition to me.
mm-hmm.
I have no idea how they would have climbed in here before, but you were supposed to be able to, for when the ship is in port cold iron, you could stretch a canvas cover over the funnel, and that's what this is for, to lace that too.
So this is the actual funnel, and this is casing.
Yes. Yeah, these are some of the pressure blowdowns for if the boilers get too much steam pressure.
Yeah.
It blows out the top of the pipe here. So the 4 boilers that truck into this basically each have a quadrant in that top part, and the steel plate was bolted on when the ship was put into mothballs.
And then you've got the not the harpoons. So those are the tomahawks, aren't they?
Yep.
And the Sea Whiz.
So we're very fortunate. We're the only Iowa that has all 4 Sea Whiz. Original, at least. Iowa fabricated some that look reasonably good. If I didn't have real Sea Whizzes, I would absolutely take what they had.
Yeah. And then there's the second lot of box launchers.
Yep. And the harpoon launchers are in between. We've only got the canisters for the starboard side. We don't have the port side canisters.
Okay.
I imagine we were able to at some point and decided that, well, that's the river side. We're not going to pay the money, and we put a crane on the pier to put these in. We can't do that one. So it's just one of those unfortunate things that we're this close to being complete, but. And of course, the flat platform on that stack is where the drone control radar dome was added in around '86. That's the other major thing that we're missing up here.
And then, and of course, being the Iowa, she's got 2 funnels as opposed to the South Dakotas with just the 1.
Yep. And they're different shapes. They're completely different shapes. If you ever build a cheap model of the ship and it's 2 identical funnels, throw it away. Completely wrong.
Well, you can even see from like where we are, they're also slightly different heights. Because that cap is about, the top of that cap is about head height for us. Top of that cap is a little bit more than head height.
I've never really noticed it, but that could absolutely be true. Or it may just be because the ship is 10 feet higher in the bow. We may be feeling that angle here.
2 empty magazines forward and only 1 empty magazine aft. Well, at least I managed to conquer this one at least.
Yep.
Now you just listen to the ominous howl of the wind through the lines. And not to terrify anyone, but that's where we're going to try and get to.
That one you'll be tied to the ladder.
Yeah, true. We shall see. That's the drop I didn't fancy last time. Aha!
So that slots on like that. If you pull down, it won't do anything.
Yeah.
But if you pull up on it,
it
will allow it to slide both up and down.
Yeah.
So the uncomfortable trick to this is you have to lean out to get this to go up, and then you'll slide easily.
Right.
And then if you, of course, fall, you just hang there.
Okay. This should be mildly terrifying.
You want me to go up ahead of or behind you?
2 seconds. Let's see if I can actually even look up. Is that a hatch that needs opening?
I'll go up and open it, and I can come back down and go up behind you if you like.
No, that should be fine. I think if you're up there, that might be better.
Okay.
Because presumably this will have to come off as I go through the hatch.
Yes, this pipe goes about 3 feet above the hatch.
Okay.
As does the ladder, so you can get a little bit above that opening.
I think just psychologically it might be easier for me if you're up there already.
Alright. And it is going to catch on the ladder, you just have to give it a pop.
Okay.
All I can say is it gets easier the more you do it.
I realized if I looked anywhere but at the mast, it wasn't happening.
Yep.
As long as I just looked at that and I wasn't looking around, it was like I'm just climbing. There's a thing in front of me. I'm climbing. It actually got a lot harder those last few, because as you start to see the lower bit of the platform coming in, you suddenly now had an idea of movement, and the subconscious, if you're near the top, you must therefore be freaking high.
Oh, interesting. In my head, when I get to that point, like, okay, I'm almost there. I made it this far. I'm almost there.
Whereas I'm just like, no, I am very high at this point. But what of you?
Yeah. Thank God that they've got this railing platform up here. I wouldn't be here with you. You're all by yourself.
There's no way I'd be making it up here alone.
Most of the railings up here are actually made out of fiberglass as opposed to metal, just so they don't interfere with the various radar.
Did someone have a duty station up here?
No, it's one of those things that every 3 months when you've got to oil the radar or you need to come up here and do something new, that generally happens in port.
Yeah. Like maybe if they're about to go into combat and the radar seizes.
Exactly.
Oh my word, there's actually a ladder all the way up to the top to change the lights.
Yep.
We
have to do that. Keep the aviation warning lights lit, and there's actually an antenna. One of the things that you tell the junior officers to do is go up, and there's allegedly at some point was a plaque or something on top of that antenna. You have to go up and read what it says, and then come back and tell whoever that you had done it. These masts are here to prevent the radar that's radiating out from interfering with the various radio antennas and other things around here, because it is still packed in pretty close.
don't remind me how high up I am, Mr. Helicopter.
Looking down at the helicopter.
Yeah.
Let me show you something cool back. Get the mast back after you.
Okay.
The ship is just a little bit too tall to fit under the bridges, so they had to unbolt the radar antenna, take it off, and they put the mast on right here for the assembly part, which is why you see the welding stuff. They actually cut the whole mast off. You can see that they also put legs here so that they could fly it down to the pier, and then when the ship came into the bridge, they basically had a helicopter come up and hang it in place while somebody came in and welded it. In addition to cutting off this, they also cut off all the electrical cables that run up there. So like for things like the aviation warning lights, we need to rewire that.
Is it just me, or is the wind getting worse?
The higher up we are, the worse the wind is.
No, but it's like it's picking up since we got up here.
I can't say I noticed it too much worse. But you couldn't pay me to go out on any of these platforms to change those lights.
No. I'm just trying to tell my arm not to like hold on to this like it's a life raft. Otherwise I'm not going to have any arm strength left to come down. Oh, I see where the fence got bashed in by that train.
Oh yeah. I hadn't been up here since that happened. The fence used to be this awful piece of garbage, and they finally got the money. State agency, so they have to go through the state to get their money. They finally got the money to replace it, and within 3 months, somebody had the train junction in the wrong place, and the train just ran right into it. And it happened right before I got to work. So I come into work, and there's like 4 supervisors out there just yelling at this poor guy who's practically on the ground in fetal position crying.
Yeah, because I can't imagine that that fence stood up very well to a full weight train coming in.
No. Unfortunately, it had the Connex boxes behind it, and the train wasn't going all that fast. So it didn't like punch all the way through. But you've got this nice, pristine, brand new fence, and then just this big rip right where the worst thing was, we got this working a couple of years ago. So that's when I really got comfortable up here. Me and one of the volunteers came up and we had to rewire the whole thing. Well, the motor hadn't run in so long that we had to take it apart and lower it down. It's about 200 pounds. So that was no easy feat getting it down, and it was even harder getting the pitch back up here and back in place.
This is the kind of job you give someone who has absolutely zero fear of heights.
Yeah. And not having one of them, it ends up being the guy who's paid the most, it turns out.
Yeah, so we were about level with that cat before. We are a lot higher now. Oh, that's the heliport. The slightly worrying thing is it looks like some of the yards of the sail ship are actually even about our height. The blue one.
Oh, yeah.
Olympia's spotting top is a lot lower than.
I'll have to look up the height of Boucher's masts. We might be even or we might be higher. Because I know we're just a little bit taller than Constellation's masts, which I got to climb when I was working on her.
Yeah.
Which was my first attempt at conquering heights that didn't go so well. It's not an active maintained ship. The Gratlins on her, the shrouds, were not tight at all. So you get on them and they just like bow in like this. Nobody's used them in years. And then you get to the point where you're climbing up and practically climbing out at the very top. Like, nope. I much prefer that metal ladder right there.
Yeah.
To do it. This ladder, that one's pretty stable. This one vibrates a little bit. And it's not much, but just because you're on the damn thing, you feel it.
Yeah. That's the wind trying to turn the rails.
Yep.
And it's not happening.
And when we had the motor off, all the reduction gear there, originally it was well in place, and we cut those welds to see if it would spin, to see if it was worth fixing the motor. It was a couple $1,000 proposition.
Yeah, that's when you start worrying. It's like, oh, the metal is green. Yeah, you wouldn't get me up this ladder.
I've gotten to the top. Reached the top of the antenna. I haven't gotten high enough, like, down. I sort of got a head camera. All the time I went to look and confirm there isn't a black or anything there anymore. And I'm like, alright, that's my duty. I'm
done.
Fuck all, I'm done. We've got a guy who, he normally works for, like radio towers and things like that, changing aircraft warning lights. So he comes out and volunteers, I don't know, every couple of years when the bulbs start to go out. But unfortunately, there's 3 or 4 bulbs up there. So 1 or 2 die, we're fine. If it starts to go out a lot, we have him go up and he just changes all of them, regardless of if they still work or not. We don't have to bring them back a couple months later.
Is the wind always like this?
Every day. Here on the river, it usually blows down the north like it is and goes straight down the river. Nothing to stop it.
Well, the head cam's bit is recording some.
Okay.
Is this safe to stand on?
Yes, it is. It was designed to be stand-on-able, so no wires under it. Fine.
I'm just trying to see if I can get a view. Yay! View forward.
Grease this. It starts to make a loud enough sound as it's spinning.
hear it.
You can hear it down the deck. That's
Yeah.
when I know, well, it's time to oil it again.
Right, so I think if we do this in reverse, if I go down first,
Okay.
that probably work. Because I just have a feeling if you go down first, psychologically at some point, well, hey, I've got to close the hatch, and at some point,
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to go, I'm stuck up here alone, and then that'll be it. Then I'll be dead. Shit. Okay. Not looking down. Do not look down. This may take a little bit.
We got all day.
Run, yes.
Yep.
Left hand side of run.
Yes.
About this bit. Shit. Okay. I can do this. That's what you mean.
Well, having survived that particular experience, it was now time to see how quickly we could get from the top to the bottom of the ship. Originally, this was supposed to have been a race, but yeah, considering at this point my legs had about the strength of a newborn gazelle, we decided we would just try and take it at the pace I was capable of. So, without further ado, descending an Iowa-class battleship top to bottom.
It'll have to do if it runs out part way.
From experience, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes depending on how fast you go. This portion is going to sound really loud as it slams.
That's fine. As long as you don't do it while I'm halfway down the ladder.
It's all part of the test, man.
Down we go. Okay. Right.
Yeah, you can keep going. I'll just
Okay.
bring up the rear and kill the lights.
Okay.
Right there. Yep.
Coming through.
I have not.
This way?
Yep. You're going to go to your left towards the post office.
Okay.
Excuse me, this way.
Ah, yes. Armour deck. Continue on down.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, this one doesn't have a chain on it, you just have to ship it. Or it doesn't have a clip.
okay.
And the next ladder is right here.
Into the void. Quite literally.
So, we are now in engine room 1. trying to find a good place for you to jump down into the bilges.
This way.
It's all pretty damn tight. Good plumbing.
Well, we can see the bilges.
Yeah.
Right, so top to bottom from an Iowa class. Actually, not quite as. Didn't go quite as slowly as I thought.
Yeah, 18 stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have made that a bit faster, but I think my legs and the adrenaline are still going from there.
And for those of you keeping track at home, that was about 3.5 minutes from when we ducked down at the O11 level to when we actually reached the base of engine room 1, plus a little bit while we were searching for a way down into the bilges. But now it gets even more fun, because whilst we were down in the bilges, we are technically in the lowest portion of the ship. We're not at the lowest place it's possible to be whilst remaining within the watertight integrity of USS New Jersey. So where would we go to find that? Well, step one was to find one of the propeller shafts and follow it aft as far as it would go. And that quest leads us to here. This is the end of shaft 1. If you act like a Bethesda game and clip through, you'll find yourself in the Delaware. And we are going to slightly retrace our steps, mostly because I walked to the length of this shaft before realizing I'd forgotten to actually film it. So, to give you some idea how much the stern's rising, that's at full height. So this is a very, very short compartment. If you stand up at full height and you're about 6 foot, you will hit your head on a beam. And coming back here, you come across a thrust block. So this is one of the thrust blocks on the propeller shaft, which allows the force of the propeller that's being generated to be transmitted to the ship without, shoving the turbines forward through the bow, which is known as an undesirable outcome amongst most ships. And then we traverse inwards towards the amidships portion of the ship, and, well, you see that little hatch there? Yeah. Guess what? You can actually fit through that hatch. Well, some people can. We could, which is just as well, otherwise I'd still be there.
End of the keel.
And at the very end of the keel, through a couple of more of those tiny little hatches, we come to a view of the interior of one of the ship's propeller shaft skegs, and that is the deepest point on the ship completely. Believe it or not, skegs are not actually designed for human access or habitation, so you just have to content yourself with a quick look at the top of one. I mean, in theory, there is enough space that you could go down there, but you would struggle to get back up without either massive experience in climbing and or a good set of ropes and some people to help pull you through. And, well, whilst we're going through parts of the ship you won't normally see, we're also not stupid, so we didn't. But there are other portions of the ship right down here, the aft section of the New Jersey, which we can have a little bit more of a look at. So let's have a look at one more of those.
Right, welcome right aft to an Iowa-class battleship's manual steering area. So there are multiple steering positions all over the ship elsewhere that you might see on various tours, if the bridge takes a hit or the conning tower is compromised or whatever. But ultimately, if you want to steer the ship and everything else has gone, then you have these positions. There's actually a siren just behind, which you'll see overlaid hopefully, and there's a sign there that says, when this siren sounds, after steering stations take control. So we have 2 rooms like this. The other one's just on the other side behind. And in each room you have 2 of these. Each of these is obviously a hydraulic motor, and you can steer this rudder, so this is the starboard rudder, with just one. So even if you've lost all your other steering positions, even the last resort steering position has a backup. So you've got a brass dial, you've got 35 degrees to 35 degrees, left and right helm. You can see the various pressures, etc., that you need to know, which we'll see also in a minute. And there's also an indicator which shows you overall where the ship is going. So you can notice at the moment you can just spin this freely, and if you just need to immediately take control, then you just push that in, and once that's in, you now have full control. You can see this now has started to move, and this will allow you to take control of the ship. And the reason for the double backup, of course, is that, well, if this area takes a hit, you probably lose both, but it means if one of them is down for maintenance or for whatever reason there's some kind of malfunction and one of them doesn't work, you have the other one immediately ready to go. So it's very, very, very difficult to stop an Iowa class from actually steering in the right direction. And of course, although we are right after outside of the ship's main citadel, there is a separate armoured box here to protect this area. Right, and just one compartment further back, these are the actual hydraulic rams responsible for steering the rudder. Again, we're in the starboard compartment, but there are two rams, one for each direction, and you can see this thing with this massive solid steel linkage and its corresponding one down here. This is what you need to withstand the force that's exerted by this ram, which will then, as you can see as it links in here, here is the rudder king post or turn post, and this is what will actually then rotate the rudder. There's a big brass dial here, literally strapped onto the rudder post, which I will take a photo of and overlay again, which provides yet another indication of where the ship is going, direction-wise. And if you come over here, again, I shall supply an overlay photo, but down there is the steering measure of absolute last resort, which is just a small brass turn wheel, which you can very, 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 very slowly use to turn the rudder. There's some tooth marks on it because clearly it's quite difficult to turn, so someone's put a big wrench on it at some point, but you are not going to steer the ship using that. That, as far as anyone can tell, is probably just to center the rudder if everything is broken. Now, this was a sample label from 1995, and that's verifying that the grease in there is all good. So apart from the fact there are some fairly big stops that have been put in here at the moment to stop everything just being moved around by the action of the river where she's moored, these systems would probably be made to get going again pretty quickly. I mean, they're solid enough, and you can probably hear from the acoustics, again, the armour we're under, you know, that's solid, there's absolutely no ring to it. That's 7+ inches of deck armour. We've got bulkheads that are even thicker all around us. And the crew lockers, not original to this area. They seem to have been moved down here during the modernisation period, presumably guess for the guys who were recommissioning it and getting this system back up and running. They just wanted to have stuff readily accessible rather than having to go all the way back through the ship. The other thing of interest in this area is, I don't know if it's actually going to be in the camera shot, but just over here, there is a rather simple system. It's a pair of arms connected to the rudder post itself. So as it moves, whether it's because of the hydraulic rams or the manual, that then just turns a very simple indicator, which is then transmitted back up to the other areas of the ship, either back aft, or forward, where we just were, or back up to the bridge. And that actually tells everyone that's what the angle of this rudder actually is at. And I suppose if you absolutely wanted to, you could get somebody just yelling out by reading off of that indicator there. So there you go, steering.
And to wrap up today's look at the hidden parts of USS New Jersey, in the previous video, some of you commented you were quite amused, I suppose, to see me and Ryan descending into the void spaces outside of the ship. Well, outside of the ship's armour, not physically in the river, but the space between the outer hull plating and the main armour plating. And we thought, well, why not revisit that and go even deeper?
Hello everyone, we are once more in the void space. So We're in a slightly different void space to what you might have seen last time. This is the port side void, and we're quite far back. We're in the vicinity of turret 3, the aftmost of the triple 16-inch turrets. And what you might notice here is this pair of cables. We're pretty sure that this is part of the ship's degaussing system to make it less susceptible to magnetic influence mines. Ryan was mentioning earlier there's usually 3, but we are a little bit further back, and to be perfectly honest, there's precious other reason to put a massive pair of armoured electrical cables in a void space on the outside of the battleship. But as we can see here, a variety of different people have left their names and inscriptions as they've come down here prior to us. And the reason for the slightly shaky cam is because this is a very narrow void space. As you can see up there, you've got the armour belt coming down to the right of the picture, and this hull plating coming down here on the left. And they both come down at an angle. It's not the widest of spaces, and if you stand up, you're basically either going to be leaning or hitting your head. So not really much room for a tripod either. But as you can see here, this part of the armour belt has quite clearly been manufactured in such a way that it was within tolerance. They didn't feel the need to mill it down. But there's a lip here, and this part they have milled. And now we're going to go even further down and see what we can find down there. There is the noise of water somewhere. We're not sure where it is or why it is, but we may find out later on. And yes, we have found the wild Ryan. And now, as you can hear from the wonderful echo, we're even further in the void. So we were all the way up there, and this is actually quite interesting because it shows how the ship has evolved over time. You can see there used to be a hatch there, and at some point it's been welded over, and this one's been put in. And then we have this rather fascinating little ladder, which apparently is not original. This is something somebody in the 1980s thought was a good idea. And here is, you can see the sheer extent of an Iowa-class battleship's armour plate, because it's still coming all the way down. And here you can see, unlike above, this has been milled. So this plate presumably was a little bit too thick for tolerance when it was originally manufactured, and they just milled it down slightly. Now the plate then comes to an end here. So this is the lower part of an Iowa class's belt protection. Can tell it partly because these joining strips end. I apologise, I don't know how I've got mobile phone signal many feet under the river, but we do apparently. We have these pumps, which from the residue appear to have pumped diesel at some point. There is this hatch, possibly inspection hatch or something, which goes further out into the torpedo defence voids, which again at some point seems to have been welded up. And another evidence that we are below the armour belt just at this point. You can see there's its termination, there's some pipes going under it, and some other kind of access way, whether that was for piping or inspection, again has been since welded up. So clearly you don't put one of those through the battleship's armour. So we are well below the waterline, well inside the area in which, well, we're right at the bottom, so the torpedo defence system is basically all that stands between us and the water outside. You can see another pump there, or another pipe, sorry. That pipe going out into an area which would have been full of fuel originally. The reverberations in here are great. And then you've got these supporting brackets, and again, more evidence that things have changed, because those two far brackets, let's see if we can get the light there, those are solid. And then this bracket here, as you can see, has a pass-through, and so does this one. And so does this one here. And I'm standing on the platform where this pump is mounted, because you can probably just about see a light there. So you can conceal an entire Ryan Szymanski down there in that space, which is why I'm not down there, because I'm carrying the big bag of cameras and I have no idea if I'd be able to climb back up again. The rather interesting thing, of course, is where the original ladder's gone, where the mounting points for that are. Looking at it, I suspect that those smaller mounting brackets there are probably where the original ladder may have been, but we'll have to compare and contrast on our way up. The other thing to note is that this has clearly been repainted a few times, but it looks like this up here, most of this darker yellow is probably much more original paintwork, and this duller, or sort of brighter yellow colour is maybe... Hello! Yes! is a 1980s paintwork, but whoever did it has only gone up so far. Perhaps some kind of diesel or other fuel has infiltrated and caused some of it to flake off, which you can actually see around here. But it's all dry and in remarkably good condition. So yeah, this is what the kind of exterior but also interior of an Iowa class looks like. So let's see where else we can end up. I'm very tempted to sing, but apparently that's against the Geneva Convention, so I shall not sing in the void.
And so we're going to wrap it up there, because that's basically the interior stuff we went and had a look at, as well as obviously the really high up stuff on USS New Jersey on that particular visit. There are a few other things that I did on that visit that I can show you in a future video. So we got the 5-inch gun being fired with its tiny blank charge, so we don't annoy the people on the other side of the river. And a rather interesting diversion into archaeology taking place on the ship as she's having her deck refitted. If you watch Battleship New Jersey's channel, you'll have seen Ryan do a video or two about that, and I'll show you some of that as well. But that will probably be coming in a Fun Friday video in the next few weeks. Other than that, of course, wrapping this video up, thanks once again to the wonderful people aboard Battleship New Jersey who actually let me do all this stuff, including taking probably several years off my life by climbing up that mast. But I must say that was entirely my own decision. I was not under duress in any way, shape or form. I'm just literally that stupid sometimes. But there we go. And of course, once again, Battleship New Jersey going into dry dock with any luck at some point in early 2024. So keep an eye on her channel, and hopefully we will be able to watch the battleship enter the Philadelphia Navy Yard dry dock at some point in the spring next year, when the weather, presumably, if this particular visit was anything to go by, will be sunny but very, very windy. So when they announce the exact dates or the week that the ship's going into dry dock, just make sure you wrap up warm if you want to go and watch it all happen. So with that, thanks very much for watching, and see you again in another video.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.